Welcome to After Hours, OANN's long-form interview show where Washington newsmakers take off their ties, go beyond the sound bites, relax, and tell you their stories. I'm John Hines, OANN's D.C. Bureau Chief, Congressional Correspondent, and for better or worse, your Sherpa on this journey. If you like stories about former President Ronald Reagan asking a young activist to take on Washington's tax and spend crowd, and how that moment turned into a national movement that still shapes politics today, then we've got the man for you. Grover Norquist is the founder and president of Americans for Tax Reform, the organization he started in 1985 at President Reagan's request. Its flagship project is the Taxpayer Protection Pledge, a written promise by legislators and candidates to oppose any increase in income taxes on individuals or businesses. Today, nearly 1,400 elected officials at both the state and federal levels have signed on. Grover, let's start at the beginning. Before Americans for Tax Reform existed, what was there?
Well, when I got out of college, I was offered a job as the number 2 person at the National Taxpayers Union. And so I came down to Washington. And this was just at the time that Proposition 13 had exploded in California. The taxpayers movement, in 1978, June, had a big win, 60-40 in California, to cut the property tax and put limits on it, and to require a 2/3 vote of the legislature to ever raise taxes again, or a vote of the people to raise taxes at the local level. And then that spread to other states. And so I came down, and within a few months, I was the executive director, because the guy who had been executive director moved on to do something else. And we were working in probably 18 different states, getting initiatives organized and run, and which was great fun. And especially if you're just out of college and people from Newsweek are calling and asking you things, they're going, do they have any idea who they're talking to? I just got here. But in point of fact, the taxpayer movement really expanded at that point. And then Reagan got elected in '80, and he got
Well, anyway, Proposition 13 presaged Ronald Reagan's coming to national promise. It's sort of like it paved the way, right?
It did. Well, he ran in '76 as the budget cutter.
Right.
And he ran in '80 as the tax cutter. Now, you need to do both, but when you talk to people, he led with, we're going to have tax cuts to get economic growth, and we're going to rein in spending.
And that's the essence of the supply side argument, right?
Yes, exactly. And he did very well with that. I went back to school, then I came back down again, and the Reagan White House
at Harvard,
the Harvard Business School at the time, and then the Reagan White House called and said, we know you do taxes. I'd worked with the Chamber of Commerce and different things, and they said, would you be willing to take on this project of running Americans for Tax Reform? And they'd incorporated it and everything and got it ready to go. And the people around the White House.
So this was actually a creation of the Reagan administration?
Yes.
Americans for Tax Reform. Mm-hmm. Your group, ATR, was a creation of the Reagan White House.
Like Organizing for America by Obama. Mm-hmm. So it was an outside group. It wasn't the Republican Party. It wasn't the White House. It was a private
Who sat down with you and told you that you, Grover, are going to do this?
I don't know. Several people at the White House called, and I said yes.
What did the president say?
Well, he was very generous, and we got a chance to talk about what we were trying to accomplish during this. I flew on Air Force One, but there was either two or...
How old were you at this time?
20s.
20s.
Right.
So you're like 25.
But it wasn't Air Force One, because I think I flew either...
So you're just out of college, right? Grad school?
Out of college, I ran the National Taxpayers Union.
Right.
Then I went back to business school.
So you're in business school, grad school at Harvard.
Just got out of business school.
And this is what's happening. So you're maybe 25, 26.
Yeah.
And you're being flown on Air Force One?
Well, it wasn't Air Force One, because I flew down or back after the president had just used it. So
the president sent his plane for you?
Yes, or they let me
Ronald Reagan.
fly it back. It was empty. It's like me and like nobody else there. But it would have been Air Force One if the president had been sitting in it, but it's the same plane, but it's not Air Force One if the president's not in it. So I don't know what they called it.
But you were on the president's plane, and he sent it for you.
Yeah, that was kind of cool.
Yes. But I mean, this is what I'm saying is this is the import that they attached to this.
They did, and
but why was that? Because I mean, what was going on before that? It was when Congress wanted to increase taxes, or Democrats wanted to increase taxes, there would always be some study that would come out that would justify their increasing taxes for whatever it was. And Reagan's frustration was there was never a study saying that an increase in taxes would be picking the pockets of Americans. And the other thing is, you were at Harvard Business School. Okay, we brushed over a moment ago supply side. Supply side was the brainchild of Dr. Arthur Laffer.
Yes, great man.
Famously wrote on a cocktail napkin, this is the urban legend, that the more taxes you charge somebody, the less they'll want to work. Basically, that's what it is. What did they think of him at Harvard, if they thought of him at all, at Harvard Business School at that time?
I think, well, I was at the business school before Laffer got famous, but this was, Reagan got his tax cut passed in '81. Mm-hmm. And
the famous Kemp-Roth tax cut?
Kemp-Roth tax cut. And then, but it didn't take effect in 81. 81, 82, 83. January of 83 is when there were three tranches, a 5% cut, a 10% cut, and a 10% cut. And these were done. The Democrats did it to slow the thing down, but once it took full effect in 1983, you saw 4 million jobs created. You saw an explosion of growth. You saw GDP expand. There's about a 7-year expansion up until Bush raised taxes, okay? There's the Reagan growth and then the Bush less.
We'll get to that in a minute.
Because Bush didn't learn from Reagan.
Right.
How do you screw that one up, okay? How do you not learn from the guy who gave you your job? But he didn't. And not every Republican did. When Reagan came in, he was one of the very few Reagan Republicans in Washington.
Well, this is what's interesting. I think a lot of people don't realize Ronald Reagan was more like Donald Trump than a lot of people think. Everybody says, well, Ronald Reagan wouldn't have been like Trump and blah, blah, blah. He was viewed very much the same way as kind of a bull in a china shop, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And part of it was because of his tax plan. What did Tip O'Neill, the sine qua non Democrat, say about supply-siders?
Well, first of all,
he had a joke or something about supply-siders.
He was violently opposed to tax cuts because he liked to spend other people's money. But the leading Republican at the Ways and Means Committee referred, after he voted for the Kemp-Roth tax cut, he referred to it as a gamble, meaning he didn't understand what they were doing, and Bush didn't understand what they were doing either, which is really odd. That they followed Reagan because he was the president, but it wasn't until the success of supply-side economics, and that's 83 and 84, an explosion of growth, 2 years, because the first 2 years, we were living through the inflation of Carter, which was much worse than the inflation of Biden, if that's
possible.
Yeah, it's tough to believe, but it was worse. It wasn't at 8, 9, it was 10, 11, 12, 2 years in a row. And taking that down was a real project. But you got strong growth, and you went into the 84 election, and Republicans did very well. Reagan swept all but one state, Minnesota. And then as they moved forward, in 85 is when they came and said, would you run Americans for tax reform? So 85 and 86. We passed the Tax Reform Act of 1986 in 1986, which was a good idea. It would have been very odd to have picked another year to pass it in. But the Tax Reform Act of 86 took the rates down dramatically, both corporate and individual. And the Europeans watched us, and they took their corporate rates down further than we did. So by the time Trump was elected, the American corporate income tax at 34%, 35%, was the highest in the world. Maybe North Korea was higher, but nobody else. I mean, it was awful. The European average is in the 20s, and the serious countries were in the teens. So the Reagan tax cut brought the corporate rate down, but not as much as we later did,
and created ATR.
And created ATR, and we campaigned. Here was the concern: we're going to take the rates down and broaden the base. So you get rid of a lot of deductions and credits. The rates come down. Then what happens? Democrats come into power and go, let's take it up 1 point. And then you don't even have the protections of the deductions and credits. So 1 point would be a lot of money. 2 points would be a lot of money. And boom, ba-doom, ba-doom, and it might go up. And so that was the concern. So the pledge was no raising the rates, no broadening the base unless the rates come down. We wanted to protect the progress of tax reform.
When we come back, Grover Norquist shares what President Ronald Reagan told him when he first launched Americans for Tax Reform. Ronald Reagan, so the Reagan administration actually created ATR. And what did the president say to you at the inception of this?
I was given a completely free hand to help pass the bill. My contribution to Western civilization on this was recognizing that the conservative Republicans were worried that if you took the rates down and broadened the base, the rates could come back again. How do you make that difficult? How do you make that? It's not impossible. How do you make it difficult to do? That's what the pledge did. And so we got 100 members of the House and 20 in the Senate and 1 president to sign the pledge. We're never letting those rates go up again, and that's why you can feel more comfortable about the whole process. That was very powerful. Now, when Bush was elected...
And that was because you were there to protect the taxpayers, basically.
Well, what the pledge did was it was in writing, and everybody made the same commitment. In the past, people would say...
It had never been done before.
No, it hadn't been done before. There are a number of political tendencies that have pledges or questionnaires that you take, but they had lots of questions and 12 pieces to them.
What does the pledge actually say?
The pledge is 2 sentences, right? It says no raising the rate, no broadening the base unless the rate comes down. So no net tax increase. Got it? Got it. And that's very simple. And there are no ifs, ands, and buts. They're not, well, I've never had somebody go, well, I didn't really violate the pledge. You did or you didn't, okay? There's never been an argument about whether somebody broke the pledge because it's clear, it's written down, and it's the same pledge everybody takes.
But what was radical is there had never, before your organization, there had never been a group that represented taxpayers.
Well, there
back
were,
on
but they hadn't been made. They're different groups. National Taxpayers Union was there, but they hadn't simplified it, okay? Because they'd always wanted, and you have to balance the budget, and you have to do this, and here are 12 things. Nobody does 12 things, okay?
Right. Yeah.
Nobody promises to do 12 things. Nobody can do 12 things. People would be promised, do you promise not to raise the deficit? Well, I'm a congressman. I can't promise the deficit won't go up. I'm not in charge of that. What am I in charge of? My vote. I promise I will not vote for a tax increase.
So the pledge is at the heart of ATR.
Yes, and the success of the taxpayer movement, because you're only asking an elected official, a candidate or elected official, about what they're in charge of. They control their vote. You're not promising that taxes don't get raised. What if you're in the minority? The other team could beat you, okay? And then you're not a jerk because you were outvoted by the Democrats if they had the majority. You kept your word. I vote no on a tax increase. And so you weren't asking people to do the impossible. You weren't asking them, there are no weasel words in the pledge.
Was that radical? Was that radical for the time?
It was unprecedented, and it hasn't. I've had people come and say, I've got a different issue. How can I do this? And one group came and they said, we want to talk to you about it. And I said, fine. And I said, here's my suggestion. Make it 1 sentence. Make it clear. No words. Sometimes a group, whether it's a gun group or a pro-life group, there are words that the members use that don't have the same meanings that the general electorate uses because they mean they're specific. They have to be generally understood or it doesn't work. You can't say, no, I meant this.
No gobbledygook.
And people come to me with 4 paragraphs full of words that mean something different between the general electorate and politically active people. This means this. That's why it hasn't quite been replicated. It can be in certain issues. I think it could be and should be. But I'm not going to run other people's organizations.
Well, we're talking about the pledge, and you brought something with you that I think that we want to display here.
Yeah. This, you were talking about the power of the pledge.
Power of the pledge, which is central to Americans for Tax Reform. And this was and which was created, actually a creation of Ronald Reagan. The Reagan administration created Americans for Tax Reform. They told Grover Norquist at the time, flew him down in Air Force 2, I guess. It would have been Air Force 1, but it was the president's plane to set this thing up. And central to ATR is a pledge that all lawmakers are requested or required to sign?
We ask everybody who runs for office, Republicans and Democrats. We've had Democrats take it. There were 5 Democrat House members and 2 Democrat senators who took the pledge.
Maybe it's getting glare. So there we go. There we go. That's good.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay.
So tell us what we see here.
In '94, this yellow line here is when you had most Republicans take the pledge.
That's when Congress flipped, coincidentally.
Yes. From 1932, right here. This is who runs the Senate. The bottom one is the bottom one is the House. The top one is the Senate.
FDR was
elected.
The
little middle thing here is the presidency. And the Republicans only won the House and the Senate twice in 62 years, okay? 62 years. This is a sea of blue. The Republicans had the Senate for a few years here, but the Democrats...
47, 49, and 51, 53, I guess.
Yeah. This goes from 32 until, so 62 years until 94. The Republicans won twice. In 94, what happened? Bush was running...
I just want to point out, so before 94, it had been 40 years since Republicans held the House. And up here, you're saying that it had been 26 years and then 8 years since Republicans held the Senate.
But it only matters if you have both.
Right.
Really. And even there, this was once under Truman, once under Eisenhower.
Essentially, it had been over a generation since Republicans controlled the House or the Senate for any length of time.
Well, any length of time, 2 years doesn't count. This is 62 years of basically uninterrupted Democrat rule. They were there briefly. So you go 1994. What happened was that Bush was elected in '88. He defeated Dole. Dole would not sign the pledge. Bush did. All the Republicans signed the pledge in 1988, running for president, except Bob Dole, who was supposed to win. He was ahead in the thing. But on television...
He famously told a joke that there was a bus of supply-siders that went over the cliff, and the good news was...
The bad news was there were empty seats. So they give you some idea of how out of touch he was with the modern Republican Party and tax cuts. But so Dole lost, Bush won, Bush signed the pledge, won the primary. Then in the general election, he spoke to the convention, the Republican convention. He said, the Democrats will come to me and want me to raise taxes. I will say no. They'll come to me again and ask me to raise taxes, and I will say no. They'll come again and ask me to raise taxes, and I will say, read my lips, no new taxes, okay? And so he ran on the fact that he would never raise taxes. Then he got elected in 1990. He raised taxes. And he was warned that that would not be a good idea.
At the time, his approval rating was about 75%.
Oh, he was in great shape. However, raising taxes, he then proceeded to lose to a nobody out of Arkansas, which wasn't even a state at the time, I don't think. So here you have Clinton, this nobody out of Arkansas, beats the sitting president who won the Cold War, who kicked Iraq out of Kuwait without occupying the place forever, but he raised taxes, loses. So 2 years later, 96% of Republicans sign the pledge and run on the idea, we are the party that will never raise your taxes. Since then, the Republicans have never raised taxes. They've The vast majority of them have signed the pledge never to raise taxes all the way through. And Republicans have won the House and the Senate 18 years. Democrats have won the House and Senate 6 years, 3-1. We went from almost never for the Republicans to being the more dominant of the parties. That was the change. The Republican Party became the party that would not raise your taxes. And our presidents have taken the, Senate has taken the pledge, and 2/3 of Republican governors, more than 2/3 of Republican governors, have signed the pledge never to raise taxes.
So what you're saying is Republicans' success since 1994 has been because a part of the Republican brand.
We will not raise your taxes.
We will not raise your taxes.
Nothing else switched.
And that was what ATR has been working on.
Well, what we've done is made it easy for people to see who's for raising taxes and not. We made it easy for elected officials to, because if you're a freshman or you're running for office for the first time and you get up and say, I'm not going to raise your tax, how do you make that believable? You know, maybe you're lying. Well, everyone saw George Herbert Walker Bush throw away a perfectly good presidency. He should have gone down history as a great president. He won the Cold War, or he was there when Ronald Reagan won the Cold War, but he was there and he managed it. Not a lot of blood on the floor. Very impressive. One problem with his presidency: he raised taxes. He lied and he raised taxes. And he went out as a bum. That's a terrible thing for somebody to do to himself. But he did. And all these other elected Republicans go, you know what, I'm not doing that. And so voters go, you know why I believe Mary? Because Mary knows that if she promises not to raise taxes and puts it in writing, and it's all up on the web,
right,
the world will know if she votes for a tax increase. And then she's finished. And therefore, I know that she knows that I know that she'll never do it. It makes it credible. It makes an important promise believable. You know, politicians lie a lot. They don't lie about taxes. They don't lie if they sign the pledge.
Because you have the proof.
Yeah, well, every once in a while someone will say, I won't raise taxes, but they don't take the pledge. Those are the ones who will vote for a tax increase.
Who will vote for a tax increase. So would you say that ATR has changed the dynamic of the Republican Party post George H.W. Bush?
Yes, the pledge has, Americans for Tax Reform work on popularizing the pledge and informing people of it and sharing that information with people, has made it possible for the Republican Party to credibly be the party that does not raise taxes. But I want to suggest that there's a second piece to this, because that's the Washington part, the national part.
Coming up, Grover Norquist breaks down why states like New Jersey and Connecticut adopted state income taxes and what it cost them. You won't want to miss it. You are going back to the future, back to when states didn't have state income taxes. And tell me why in the world Connecticut and New Jersey decided to raise or institute state income taxes when they were doing so well. I mean, New Jersey raised created a state income tax, and I believe in 1977. You would know better than I.
Yes.
And Connecticut was tax-free until, I guess, 91?
It's even worse than that with New Jersey. In the 1960s, New Jersey did not have a sales tax or an income tax, okay? They were like New Hampshire, New Jersey. And they said, our property taxes are so high. Not, let's get the mayors to stop spending so much money. We need a different tax. Let's have a sales tax. So in 1965, 66, they put in a sales tax in order to get the property taxes down. Then, 10 years later,
what happened to property taxes?
10 years later, they kept going up. 10 years later, 1977, right? At 76, 77, they come in and say, oh my goodness, the property taxes are so high. Now they have a property tax and a sales tax. We must have an income tax to get the property taxes down. So they put in an income tax, okay? So they have a property tax, a sales tax, and an income tax, all of which get bigger.
Well, what's interesting to that story is that I think it was, I can't remember which president said that there's a continuum of freedom and security. And if you ask for more security, people will give you more security, and you sacrifice your freedom, and you think you're getting more security, but in the end you don't, and you lose your freedom. It's kind of the same thing with taxes, according to what you're saying. The argument is that one tax will go down if you have another tax, but inevitably all the taxes rise at the same time. Why is that?
Because politicians will spend every penny that comes in, and they will use that money to argue, to have more government employees who argue for more government spending. And so every time the government gets bigger, it gets more powerful, and its demands to get your money out of your pocket. 50 states. The green states, there are 8 of them, have no income tax. The famous ones, Florida, Texas, Tennessee, Alaska, so on. The yellow states have an income tax, but it's a single rate, flat rate tax. And the reason that that's, and it used to be that there were 8 of them, but in the last 6, 7 years, another 8 have joined. So
why is that?
Well, because Americans for Tax Reform has been out working with various states, starting. You
guys have been very busy.
Well, we've focused a lot on the state level because this is the future. Okay, this is how we change things. We go to the states. Republicans have an advantage over Democrats. Republican ideas of limited government, less spending, less regulation work. So you can do them in one state, like Texas or Florida, and then other states see they work and want to replicate it. Democrats have an idea like Obamacare, and if they do it in one state, as they did in Vermont, they passed government-run health care in Vermont. They repealed it because it didn't work, okay? Or in Massachusetts, Dukakis, when he was running against Bush, he passed a version of Obamacare, Clinton care, in Massachusetts. But as soon as, and he said, see, I'm going to do for the country what I did in Massachusetts, but it hadn't taken effect in Massachusetts. As soon as he lost the presidential election, the Massachusetts Democrat left-wing legislature and Dukakis repealed Dukakis care because it didn't work, and they knew it didn't work. Now, they were willing to sell it to the whole country, but they weren't willing to try it in one state. The 2 Democratic senators from Vermont, the state that repealed sort of their version of Obamacare, they're in favor of making the whole country live under Obamacare and tougher versions of Obamacare. But dumb ideas, truly stupid ideas, could only be done nationally, all at once. Because then you don't know what caused the problem. You know, I don't know, could be global warming. You know, but you don't know that it's that one bill. But if you go to one state and pass a law which makes health care run by the government and there's a problem, then everyone knows exactly what went wrong.
So we've got the yellow states, which, remind us again, what is happening in the yellow states?
There were 8. There are now 16.
This is what ATR has been working on.
Arizona went to 2%. North Carolina.
In terms of income tax?
These are income tax. They took their income taxes down. North Carolina is going down to 2.49. They're triggering down.
Currently it's at 4.25, I believe, right?
And it's on its way down to 2.49. The way they're going down is they're not, and this is very important, they're not taking the income tax and cutting it and putting it over to the sales tax or something else. What they're doing is, as revenue comes in above, here's our spending limit. When revenue comes in above that, instead of spending it, they cut the income tax. So how do you pay to get the income tax down? By taking revenue flowing in and reducing the income tax.
Instead of spending it.
Instead of spending it. And so it was up like 7.5%, now it's down to 4.2, and it's going to go down to 2.5, and then on down to 0.
Now, you also have a black dot there in North Carolina.
Correct.
You say that the income tax is going down. Tell us what the black dot indicates.
There are 8 states are green, no income tax.
Right.
There are 16 states yellow, they have a single rate tax. There are 12 states that have a black dot. That's where they're all Republican states here. The Republican state where the leadership, the governor and both houses of the legislature said, we are going to 0.
Zero
it is
income tax.
Zero
no income tax state.
Right.
How many of those are there?
Well, there are 8 now, but there are 12 on the way. Now, In Oklahoma, they have passed the law.
So there are 8 no-income tax states now.
Correct.
And you're saying there are 12
more
that want to
are
be
committed to going to zero.
no-income tax states.
Right.
And this is because of what ATR has been doing out. This is your spade work, right?
And well, we're working with great legislative leaders and
But would
great
this be
governors.
happening if there was no ATR?
Maybe more slowly, but certainly one of the things that we've been able to do at Americans for Tax Reform.
Well, you know this kind of stuff doesn't happen unless somebody is out there. I mean, everybody wonders where all the protests are coming from, and there's somebody behind it. Everybody wonders why this is happening, and there's somebody behind it, right?
When we worked with North Carolina, we then took it to other states and to other governors and said, take a look at what North Carolina's doing. And the governor of Iowa and the legislative leadership of Iowa said, we want to do that. And so they've taken their income tax, which was a top rate of 8.6. It's now, over a few years, gone down to 3.8.
And they want to go to zero.
And their plan is to go to zero, yes. The governor there is a real hero. The state legislature has been just great. Louisiana, also, the governor there has moved it to 3% flat, and then they're on their way to zero. Oklahoma has passed a law which will take it automatically to zero over the next several years. Illinois automatically goes to zero as revenue comes in. I'm sorry, Indiana. Sorry. Thank you for catching that. Indiana. Kentucky is on its way to zero. So is West Virginia. So
Ohio, West Virginia.
5 states are automatically
North Carolina,
clicking down
South
to
Carolina,
zero.
Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Iowa, Oklahoma, and Arizona.
Yeah. So these are moving forward. So
and Utah.
What does this mean? This means that more and more people leave California, move to Texas, leave New York, and move to Florida. But now they're going to be, over the next several years, not just 8 zero-income tax states with zero income tax, but moving towards 20. Arizona, as soon as they get a Republican governor, will go to zero. They've moved down to 2.5%. They have a Democrat governor. When that person goes and they get a Republican, they will go to zero. Our friends in Iowa are committed to zero. They have a Republican legislature that will and governor that will move forward. Now, Missouri just started. They have a new Republican governor, and the first thing he said, we're going to go to zero on the income tax and have full school choice. The woman who is the governor of Arkansas is committed to go to zero. She ran on that commitment, and she's been taking the income tax down dramatically since she's been in office. So you only get a black dot if you've actually taken serious steps towards going to zero, as opposed to giving a nice talk and said, we're thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening here is federalism empowers good ideas, because Texas and Florida had a good idea. Let's not have an income tax. A lot of states for many years saw that, but then didn't act on it. Now we've got states closer to you. Arizona's doing it. People looking at that. Other states looking at it. Of course, New Hampshire was zero income tax state. A few years ago, it wasn't. They used to have a tax on dividends and interest. That they abolished. Tennessee had a tax on dividends and interest. That they abolished, and it went to zero. So as these states move towards zero, 2 things will happen. Some of the blue states will get smart and begin to bring their income taxes down. The ones that don't will lose congressional seats, because with redistricting in 2030, another 12, 13 congressional districts are going to move out of blue states into red states with low or zero income taxes. States, particularly states that are
people will vote
moving
with
to
their
zero.
feet in the wallets.
Yes. And that means the House will become increasingly Republican, because that's where the House people are elected in red states. And the Electoral College will make it easier for Republican presidential candidates to win the votes, the Electoral College votes, of more and more states, because that's where the people live.
Is that your goal?
Yes, is to move people and Electoral College votes and congressional votes to make the United States. That's how you want to fix Congress, get more people elected in red states where they're used to having limited government. And I think someday, down the road, when we have more and more states with flat rate income taxes, we already have 24 states have a single rate tax. The blue states, the green states are 0, and the others are yellow, right? That's a flat rate tax, 24. We're going to have a majority in a couple of years. Kansas and Oklahoma are both, and West Virginia are all going to flat rate pretty quickly. That'll be more than half the states are flat rate. Then I think people will look, well, why don't we have a single rate at the national level? That will be very important.
When we return, Norquist explains how West Virginia's move to eliminate its income tax helped revive the state's economy. Find out more after the break. Don't touch that dial. Talk about, you mentioned West Virginia, and it's going to zero, wants to be a zero tax state. West Virginia is an interesting state because it has had a total transformation in a very short period of time. How related is that to taxes, would you say? Because it used to be very Democrat, and in just 10 or maybe 15 years, it's swung totally the other way. And now it's going to a zero income tax. Why?
The two southern-ish states that took the longest to flip from Democrat to Republican were Arkansas and West Virginia during the Obama years. Whereas the other states, it is amazing how long, Civil War is a long time ago, and yet the states that were more conservative.
Glare there, just maybe. Oh, there we go.
That the states that, as the Democratic Party got further and further left, you would have thought the southern states would have shifted sooner than they did. But it took a longer time. West Virginia flipped on labor issues because of the abuse of some of the labor unions that they have there. And they voted for lower spending. They voted for school choice. It is a state that wanted to be red, but just had traditionally been voting out of habit. But you have to make clear to people the real differences. And I think when the Republican Party became the party that says we're never raising your taxes, when people took the pledge is a big deal in West Virginia. People get together and sign the pledge and keep it. We worked with the governor on phasing the income tax down to zero. Now the senator from that state. That was a very important project line. It didn't have to happen, but because of the leadership of the Republican Party and the governor of West Virginia, they made it happen.
That's not necessarily true, because Republicans, as much as Democrats, like to spend money. A lot of them, not all of them, a lot of them. I suspect that wouldn't have happened unless your group was there, and unless the pledge was the center of what ATR does, right?
I think it helps. I'm not trying to undersell what we've accomplished, but when we bring a good idea to a governor, there are a bunch of governors who go, "That's a very nice idea. Nice to visit with you," and they don't do it. Okay, the governors who get it and go, "I get it," and move on it. That you can introduce an idea to somebody and show them 3 states that are making it work, and I think that's what's important. You need to be able to show a governor, a state legislator, this is what's happened in the other states. Nobody wants to buy a pig in a poke. Nobody wants to jump into the water without knowing it's under the water. And we now have enough examples of states with zero income taxes, states on the way to zero, that you can make the case.
But this is the future, you're saying.
It is the future, and it's why the modern Republican Party
20 no-tax states. No income tax states.
Yeah, down the road. And as those happen, those are the ones that are on track now.
There are 8 now. There are 12 that are on the way.
Yes.
Some are closer than others.
And there are 24 that have a single rate tax. The reason why a single rate tax is important, and Illinois, blue state, Illinois, Chicago, Illinois, 2/3 both houses Democrat, Illinois, corrupt, okay? Their tax is 4.9%, 4.95%, under 5%. New York's at 10, they're at 15 in California, the other blue states are at 10. They're under 5. Why? Because by Constitution, they can only have one rate. And so the very left-wing governor and the very left-wing legislature, I'm not in the room when they make these decisions, but they go into the room and say, do you think we could raise the income tax? They go, are you kidding? We'll get killed in the next election. They don't think they can raise the income tax on everyone. What Democrats like to do is have a graduated tax. Okay, we're only going to raise taxes on
the rich,
a couple percentage of you, okay? And this is called trickle-down economics. Only rich people. What are rich people?
which was why that's how the income tax originally started, as you well know.
Top rate, 7%. Top rate, 7%. Now the bottom rate's more than 7%.
Yeah.
It was a tax on rich people. Now it's a tax on everybody.
Still ahead, Norquist lays out why he believes it's time to de-bloat the federal government. I love this quote. It comes from a Wall Street Journal interview with you. I don't have the date. But the predicate is, it says in the journal, many believe the government is at best superfluous and at worst a drag on a free market. It has long been their aim to cut taxes to starve the beast. Grover Norquist, who founded Americans for Tax Reform in 1985 at the urging of President Reagan, declared in 2001, quote, I don't want to abolish government. I simply want to reduce it to the size where I can drag it into the bathroom and drown it in the bathtub. I simply want to reduce it to the size where I can drag it into the bathroom and drown it in the bathtub. That's your real goal, isn't it?
Well, where that comes from.
That's what all this is leading to.
To reduce the size of government, yes. The quote comes from...
No, but you want to drown it in the bathtub.
No, I want it down the size where you can drown it in the bathtub. So you can, and where the quote comes from is a interview with National Public Radio, back when National Public Radio actually interviewed conservatives. And they did. Not in the last 10, 15 years, but before when they used to. And the reporter asked and said, so do you want to abolish government? And I said, no, I don't want to abolish government. I simply want to make it very, very small. And that was to dramatize the very, very small argument. And I went on to say, I think in the next 25 years, this was during the Clinton years, we can reduce government, federal government, as a percentage of the economy by half. We were on track. If we had continued, because we were downsizing from having won the Cold War, if we could have continued that, we would have, over a 15-year period, cut the government in half as a percentage of the economy. Now, the government would be bigger, but the economy would be bigger. So you can do two things. You want the economy to grow and the government to grow more slowly so that it is a smaller burden.
And that's really the problem, because during the, I guess, the Biden years and the Obama years, the size of government, you know this, but I saw it here somewhere, increased, I think, 88%, is that right?
Yes, it dramatically increased, and we need to slow its growth, and in some places reduce what the government's doing, period, but certainly slow its growth. And that's the example we have here with phasing the income tax down. See, so instead of growing like this, we're going to grow here, and that difference is what you can cut taxes, and that makes for smaller government.
Why are taxes so bad? I mean, a lot of Democrats think, well, they say, you know, we're doing more for you. We can take care of you. We can give you all kinds of free stuff. We can, you know, if we just are able to increase taxes and spend more money. Is that, I mean, that's an appealing argument to, I imagine, some subset of Americans, right?
Well, there are several things the government does. Sometimes the government spends time making it difficult to look for oil and difficult to get energy. So it actually raises the cost of energy by what it does. So the government actively makes the world a worse place to live in.
More expensive.
Makes it more expensive for people to get through life.
Is there an equivalent to dollars and freedom?
Well,
are dollars freedom?
Well, if you have $10, you are free to spend that as you will. If the government takes the $10, you aren't. So it reduces your freedom of what you
That's how the
decide
government
to
nibbles
do.
away at your freedom, is basically by taxing.
It's a piece of it, yeah. And then they also tell you what to do an awful lot.
I was going to say, isn't it also about control?
Yes.
Isn't that what you're objecting to ultimately?
Yes, because
Control?
they take the money they take from you and they hire people to then run your life.
And tell you what to do.
And tell you what to do. And that's not terribly useful.
Why don't you want to be told what to do?
Because the country was founded by people who said, over here, we're not going to have a king who tells us what to do. We're not going to have a king who tells us this is the religion for everybody. We're not going to have a king who tells us this is what you're allowed to say and this is what you're allowed to write. And by the way, we can go look at everybody's stuff if we want to and tell you what to do. And we can...
More government means there are people who have nothing to do except get into your life and your business, basically.
And they look for new ways to do that.
And so this is your plan to increase the potential to have Republican presidents who presumably are anti-tax, because that's part of the brand now.
Yeah.
And by getting to a point where you have no state income tax in these states, people will move to these states because they're economically prosperous. People will vote with their wallets and their feet. You have more electoral votes in those states, which are for freedom. We'll get a Republican president, and that will have power redounding to a no-tax president and someone who presumably favors more freedom for people.
The pledge has kept the Republican Party as the party that won't raise taxes. You can go back into the past before the pledge. Goldwater, Barry Goldwater, voted against the tax cut that John F. Kennedy had.
There are a lot of people out there who don't know who Barry Goldwater is.
Barry Goldwater ran for president in 1964. He was a great free market conservative, and yet he didn't get the importance of keeping taxes low. He voted against the Kennedy tax cuts were very good for economic growth. This is back when the modern Democratic Party liked economic growth, but that was a while ago. Not since Kennedy. They haven't been in that zone. But Kennedy wasn't. Kennedy would be a Republican today on defense, on gun, on Second Amendment, he's a member of the NRA, on taxes, and even on spending. But there were Republicans who were so fixated on the deficit, instead of going, keep spending down, that's how you deal with the deficit, was they want to chase runaway spending with runaway taxes. Well, that's a fool's errand.
It feeds the beast.
Yes.
And I mean, that was what Ronald Reagan intuitively knew. And I suppose how he ultimately changed the Republican Party forever was on the issue of taxes, right?
Ronald Reagan showed people that we did cut taxes under Coolidge, and we could have learned it then, but there wasn't this moment where Coolidge said, this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it, and watch what happens. The same thing with Kennedy. Kennedy did say it, but the press didn't cover it in the same way. He said, we're going to do this for economic growth. Reagan had to fight it out with the establishment press, with some in his own party, certainly with many of the Democrats, to say this is why we're cutting marginal tax rates. But there was also the moment when we did the Taxpayer Protection Pledge in '86. Many Democrats voted for lower rates and a broader base because they'd watched what happened. But then they decided they just wanted more money, and they dropped what they'd learned, and they went back to tax and spend.
Very good. Grover Norquist, the president and founder of Americans for Tax Reform. And we didn't even talk about the 4 books you've written. I'm sorry. Perhaps we'll get to that next time.
I'm working on a 5th.
We'll have to talk again soon. Grover Norquist, president of Americans for Tax Reform. Thank you for talking to us in After Hours.
Thank you.